All righty. Ashley,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's Wednesday, right?
I think so. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Or Friday.
It's Tuesday. No, Saturday. Yeah, I have no idea what day it is. So I know yesterday was 420 because all of my pothead friends all took snapshots on 4:20 p.m. on 420 2020. So it's the only reason I know it's the 21st.
Well, this will go down in history as how we all collectively figured out what day it was, 420.
Yeah, right?
So, thank
Yeah.
you all so much. Sorry. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here today. William, do you want to take this one since?
I got it.
Okay, I'll
I
walk
just
us through housekeeping.
I want to hear you giggle more, and I think the audience wants to hear that too because we need more giggling in our life. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about talent acquisition technology and not anything COVID related. So if you signed up for something COVID related, you are on the wrong webinar. And apologies for all of that. But today we're going to be talking about some other things, and we're going to have fun. And we're going to try and have a little bit of a distraction whilst at the same time also educating and teaching and learning. Two things. One, if you have questions, please, the webinars are kind of the best ones, at least, are based on audience participation. So even if you got something rolling in the background, if you've got a question, Ashley's going to interrupt me when she sees really great questions, and we also have a time period at the end where we'll take some of those things. So
Yes.
let's see here, and advancing the slides.
We're
There we
running
go.
slow today.
Learning the technology. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, webinars.
Just
Webinars a little slow. GoToWebinar is a little bit slow. Shocking,
it
not
is.
shocking. Anyhow, you want to tell people about the housekeeping part?
Yes, we talked about a little bit of this already, but just so you know how the platform works, you are in listen only mode. That means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Go ahead and ask those questions like William said. You see a side panel here. When you open GoToWebinar, you've got a little docking panel. Down at the bottom, there's a questions area. So just pop those in there. I will pull them as you ask them. Share, we're live. Just use the RDaily hashtag, share all over social media. People can join while we're going. So let your friends and colleagues know what's going on. And you will receive a copy of the slide deck and the recording after the webinar. Keep your inbox open for that. And that's it. Then we move on. And we're here with iSIMS today. I believe that is the next slide.
Indeed, it is. Good
Did you see
friends.
how
I like what you did there. That was nice. It was
yeah.
like dramatic foreshadowing. I appreciate that. Um, iSIMS has been in the business for a long time, and they do good work. They're very easy to integrate with. So and they sponsor stuff like this. They're actually really good in the community as well. I remember during the last recession that they did a wonderful job of just being supportive of the community. While everyone else kind of got quiet, they were one of those that kind of stood up and helped out. But we love them. Hope that you love them. Take a look at them if you haven't, or take a new look at them if you haven't looked at them in a while. And we appreciate their sponsorship. About me, well, good gosh, I've been studying HR technology for longer than I really kind of care to admit publicly. And I do a lot of work with both marketers on the vendor side and then practitioners. And practitioners being people that work a desk in HR, recruiting, sourcing, employer branding, et cetera. So I have a lot of interesting conversations. And so it's a confluence of being able to see kind of all sides. And so I have interesting conversations on a daily basis and have for 20 plus years. And some of that we're going to bring to bear today. And the agenda, as it looks right now, it looks might be a little bit intimidating. It's not. some of these are graphics. So I want you to learn while we go through things. And at the same time, if there's something you don't understand, or if I skip over it faster than you care, ping me afterwards and ask me to explain it to you. Like my whole job right now is essentially helping people. Like my job has changed. If I had a job description, my job description changed, and the job is to help people. Period. End of story. So if you need anything and we don't get either deep enough for you, or you need to just further clarification, then just ping me. And again, at the end of the deck, there'll be like 19,000 different ways you can reach out to me. So it turns out I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. Current state versus future state. The way to think of this is, okay, December, we were in a different reality than we are right now. Okay, so current state is what we are dealing with from a recruiting all the way from sourcing to onboarding. If you want to say talent acquisition exists at the far edges of sourcing and onboarding. So what is our current state? Okay, we're in a hiring freeze. Fantastic. That's our current state. It is what it is. Like we could argue over what it is, but it is what it is. What do you want the future state to be? And so what is that vision, if you will? So when I talk about pro tips, I actually hate the phrase pro tip, so I'm not sure why I put this in my own presentation. But when people say pro tip, I usually deduct IQ points. Anyhow, let's put that aside. I put it in there that I can blame no one but myself. But you have to, when you look at current state, be very pragmatic in how you look at current state, but think about future state in the sense of, okay, well, this isn't going to last forever. There will be an unfreeze. We will have to get back to some new normalcy. And what will that be, and how will we navigate that? Okay, so one of the frameworks I want you to think about as you navigate your vision is efficiency, if you will, is gained in kind of people, processes, and products. So the 3 Ps, if you will, different than the 4 Ps of marketing. These Ps, especially, are essentially how your people are organized and how they collaborate. Processes, these are thousands of little micro processes, micro experiences that can all be audited and made better. And again, in your future state, what you're trying to navigate is, okay, how do we organize our people differently? Now that we've all learned that we can work from home, how does that change our business? How does it change some of our processes? And then the products is the tech stack. So again, sourcing and onboarding, what assessments are you using? What background screening, or what are CRM, ATS, sourcing technologies? All along the way, you could be using multiple technologies. How are they integrated? How does the data flow from one to the other? And so all of those things, the delta of all those things is where you want to look at your vision for future state. How do you make those things better? And again, having a really good vision for the future helps you navigate the current. So what I ask people to do when they look at processes and they look at their people and they look even at technology is to not just make an assumption, but just to audit. Like take a process, like an onboarding process, a simple example. So an onboarding process sounds easy, right? Well, now with our new normal, onboarding might be different. And so we might be onboarding people that we have never, interviewed, not out of a video environment, and we need to onboard them so that they can do their job. Great. Okay, well, the old standard onboarding kind of process would chuck that out the window. That's gone. So we audit that process, then we refine it with what we know now is needed, and we test it, and then we go back and audit it. And you can do that with every process and every microprocess that you have. You can do this, put this on a cycle to where you're always constantly making these things better. So that again helps you think about these things, not just on a meta level, but then to break them down into little bitty things that you can actually focus on. And okay, how did we source yesterday? How did we source for technical talent? Okay, how did we do that? How do we need to do that in the future? And is that different? Is there a refinement that can be gained? The next thing, again, pro tip, is prioritization. A lot of phone calls that I get are usually on both sides. But it's practitioners that are overwhelmed with all the things that they're doing and they should be doing, that they already know that they should be doing. And so typically those calls go with me coming back to, okay, well, what's the most important? Let's just there's the 15 things that you just listed. Got it. I wrote them down. If you could only do one, what would be the one? And then when you start thinking like that, it's like for a lot of practitioners, myself included on this, when you're in that, when you're in standing up next to all the trees and you're in the forest, it's hard to see the entire forest. It takes another vista in which to kind of overlook the whole forest. So you almost have to kind of think about it like, okay, I can't be in I can't be in the trees right now. I need to think of what is that one thing, if we could change anything else, if it's technology, if it's a process, if it's the way you collaborate or your people are organized. Okay, well, can't do it all. Got it. Check. Not superhuman. Understand that. Okay, what's the one thing, two things, three things, etc. And I tend to kind of look at that as the bigger the initiative, the less of them you can consume in a year. So I used to kind of run with the rule of 3 initiatives. So every year I would just pick off, everyone would kind of debate, discuss, do all that stuff, and we get it down to 3, and those would be the 3. That's it. And even during the year when new things came up, we just like held fast to, yeah, we're going to complete these initiatives first, and then we'll revise that in December because we're on a calendar year. So prioritization hugely important. Now I want to kind of get into buying trends and talk a little bit about what you see in software. So you have, if you ever feel overwhelmed with the choices that you have, first of all, don't feel like you're overwhelmed, because you should be completely overwhelmed, because there's more choice. It's not that you have one CRM to pick from. Let's say Avature. There's 180 CRMs. So it's not as easy as it once was. If you take ATS as a category, there's 1,000 ATSs now. What ATS fits you best? What ATS is integrated with your payroll system? What ATS is integrated with your performance management system? These are different questions. But the way that we buy software, these are kind of the 10 things that I tend to kind of talk to people about, and they're all important. And I could go deeper into all of these. So if you have questions about these, things that are what are predictive, what's reflective, etc., just ping me, and I can actually send you slide decks that kind of explain those things. But I want to kind of hone in on connectivity as one of the most important things, as a trend, and something you should look for when you're buying any technology. And again, we're dealing with future state. I know that you're living a hellish nightmare right now, and I get it. So am I. So is everybody I know and love. So future state, when you do get back to the point where you are buying technology, one of the things that I want you to really think about is that the connectivity of that technology, both how easy it is to connect that technology to other technologies that you use, and also what is the ecosystem that they already have. So let's use some real world examples just for giggles. iCIMS, sponsor Greenhouse, not a sponsor. These folks, you would think that they compete, but they don't really compete. These are 2 different ATSs with 2 different ecosystems. One of the things that you look at if you were switching out an ATS or doing something different with your ATS is you would look at the ecosystem, the partners that they're already integrated with, because those pre-built integrations they make your life, they make your workflows so much easier if they're already connected. And so the one thing I want you to look at when you get back into the buying world is, okay, what am I switching out? If I prioritize the CRM, okay, fantastic. We've built a list of 100. Now we've whittled it down to 10. We do 10 hour-long demos. We whittle that down to 3. We bring them on site. 20 people in a room, 2-hour demos, and one of the things to consider is connectivity. I don't know if y'all can hear one of my pit bulls barking in the background, but I believe that's the postman coming. But yeah, connectivity is critical and will become even more critical because you're going to have more and more technologies that are lined up that are a part of all your workflows. And again, you don't need to be doing data entry, single entry, double entry, triple entry, quadruple entry, etc. That's where data errors come from. And data analytics, when people talk about data analytics and people analytics, and they talk about it in a way, it's all based on data. So, garbage in, garbage out. If you've got a bunch of systems cobbled together and they're not really talking together, and you have to take data out, export it, import it back in, you're going to create a bunch of errors, or you will create errors, right? And so those errors actually impede your ability to do great people analytics work. So, it's one of those deals as you look at analytics and you think more about your future vision of what you want to do in terms of buying technology, look at connectivity. So as we think about connectivity, and people use the words API. API is a great way of thinking of it. It's the connector of how data flows to and fro from system to system. And that's there's more technical language that I could use, but I choose not to. It's thinking about how this data goes from your sourcing application into your CRM into your ATS then connected to all of your different assessments, skills testing, background checks, etc., to where that you're not going in and out of these systems and the systems don't talk to one another. All right, so that's one of 10, and instead of going through the whole 10, because I don't, I want you to think about your vision, think about connectivity. Now, buying software as an overview, I want you to think of kind of what I call the 7 points of satisfaction. When you're buying software, it all comes down to usage and consumption and adoption. So you have to navigate essentially, okay, buying the software, that's important, and that is part of the job, but it's not the job. The job is really, the hard work actually starts after you sign the contract. And it's hard to talk about like that because we think, oh my God, it took us this far. We spent so much time. We have our day jobs and all these other responsibilities, etc. What do you mean that the job starts? Well, if you buy technology and people don't use it, be it a sourcing technology like Zap Info or Seekout or something like that, and people don't use it, or LinkedIn, and people don't use it, then you're wasting money. And so consumption, usage, adoption essentially comes down to one thing, and that's training. And the more you invest, if you think of it like this, in training, the more you'll consume of the technology. So this is why out of those 7 points of satisfaction, the most important to me is training. How do we successfully navigate training for all of our employees, be it virtual, be it learning style, be it learning differences? What do we do, and how do we partner and collaborate with the vendors that we pick to essentially make sure that everyone that logs into whatever that software is, they know how to maximize the value of the software that they get. So that, if you want to just solve for that, train. And that training comes down to not one size fits all, but basically meeting users and admins where they are. And so if someone doesn't learn by webinars, then having a huge webinar library as your training library, that's, for some people, it's as if you don't have any training. So you've got to really work with your vendor partners to collaborate and figure out, like, okay, We bought the technology, we've signed the contract and all that other stuff. Now we're implementing. How do we get people to consume what we've bought? And how do we get the maximum value out of everything that we've bought? So training comes down to training, period of the story. I'm gonna stop here, Ashley. As you know, I love if people have questions or just, interrupt me. I know I have a cadence that's kind of sometimes hard to get a word in edgewise. That's okay. Just talk over me. I'm comfortable with that. But go ahead.
We do have one question
Bring it.
from David, and it's not. So, have you ever had a PIMS cup?
I'm sorry.
It's a little unrelated. David, he asked if you've ever had a PIMS cup, and I promised him I would ask you the question. It's a cocktail in the UK.
I have not. I have not. 10 Cup whiskey made in Colorado is a dry rye, which is fantastic. Has nothing to do with me, but it is actually. I'm so glad that that it's not like really crappy whiskey, but it is actually really good. So I have not had that drink. I've pretty much had every other drink. I've not had that drink, but I'll look that up. That's worthy.
No, it sounds like a new goal for the
It
year.
is post-COVID.
Yes.
New goal, or maybe it's something I can order online. So I feel good about that.
Well, everyone send your questions in. I'm going to mute and send those questions in. I'll ask William as they come in.
Appreciate you. All right. So one of the things that you want to do when you're reviewing technology is not look at a demo environment, not look at PowerPoint, not look at kind of a staged environment, because that's where vendors can control all of what goes on and what you see. And on some level, if you review a demo of software in our space and you're not dazzled at the end of that, the salesperson should probably not be in sales. That's probably an indicator that they're not good at their job. So that's the whole idea of a demo, is to get you excited about the software. But this is nuanced and it's important. When you look at live software, you're looking at someone's instance. You're looking into a company, a customer of theirs, and how they use the software. Now you can't hide that. At that point, it's on the roadmap. Yeah, that's developed, it's live. You're looking at real software being used. And that cuts out a lot of the mistakes. And again, the overpromising. That happens with every vendor on some level, is that we want to believe that we're going to have that live by the time they sign or by the time that they're going to use it, and so we'll tell them, yes, we have that, it sounds like a lie, and then on some levels it is, but they don't do it. In my opinion, it's not done to hurt you. They're just bullish. They're just thinking positively about their own firm's ability to get that live. Well, if you want to kind of cut out all of that, what do you have now? You look at live software. And so that helps. All right. So when you're being sold, this is important and also going to be kind of funny for you to think about. But here's essentially a graph that, or a chart. Yeah, I guess you could just call it graphic, make it simple. We buy from people we like. Shocking news at 11. We tend to, the salesperson, be it male, female, old, young, whatever. If we like the person, we automatically kind of give them a chance. If we don't like them, the opposite, the opposite is also true. If we don't like them from our first impression, it doesn't matter what they're selling. Maybe giving away gold bricks, we tend to kind of shy away from them for whatever reason, right? Okay. The compelling part is the important part. So based on your initiatives, based on what's important to you, based on what you know the firm needs, is their software compelling? Does it solve what you need it to solve? Someone tried to sell me at one point global payroll. And during the presentation, he was telling me, if you have 150,000 employees in 160 countries, you can do global payroll on your iPhone. And I thought to myself, if I was doing that, why would I ever do global payroll on my iPhone? Like, that was a feature to him, but was not a feature to me. It was not compelling. And so when you think about how you're being sold, just kind of think that already know your bias, right? You're gonna buy from people you like, generally speaking. But understand that now it's a game. Okay, that's going to happen. That's just how we're all kind of built. Is this compelling? Is it solving what I need it to solve? Yes, no, maybe. All right, ways to purchase. This is a real fun graphic as well, because a lot of people think that there's just one way to do things. And I think that, when buying software, I've just got to buy the whole lot, everything that they have, and there's no flexibility. And this is even now, but even in December, they thought the same thing, that a lot of practitioners are like, well, they're giving me a 3-year contract. This is the only way I can do it. Incorrect. Vendors then, pre-COVID, and vendors now are extremely flexible. You just got to ask. So again, you can do nothing, option A. You can do a small pilot. Like, let's say you're going to roll out a new personality assessment, and you really love this personality assessment. You really think it could really kind of set you off in the right direction. Fantastic. But you don't want to roll it out to the 12,000 employees that you have. Okay. Well, roll it out to your executive team, roll it out to a group, a division, a department, a region, and do a small pilot and test it. See if it works. Pilots can be done paid, not paid. There's a lot of different ways to do those. You could do a larger pilot, like, oh, we're gonna just do the U.S. and not any of the international markets. Let's roll out a large pilot. Something mild is not a pilot. You do something that's essentially a contract. That's okay. Let's do an annual contract. Let's do a 1-year contract. So you're saying at that point, we're going to do this for all the right reasons. But we're going to do it for the whole organization. But maybe not make the depth of the years in the contract. And then something huge. You fall in love with something and you know it's going to actually impact the organization in a substantial way. There's leverage when you talk to a vendor that hey, we want to do a 5-year, scratch that. We want to do a 10-year contract. Turns out the price goes down, right? News at 11. So what you see in the middle is essentially your price and your delta representing change. And each one of these, in some ways, represents change. Even a small pilot, the people that are affected are going to change. They're going to have to do some new things. So every one of these has a change factor, and every one of these has, to some degree, a dollar factor to it. So instead of that one way of buying, you've got a lot of different, ways to buy. Like, you pick your favorite technology. You could call them today and say, hey, can we do this? And not just because of COVID, but even pre-COVID, they would have taken a look at it. Like, okay, let's take a look at that. We'd love to work with you. You're a great company. It would be a great brand. We would, this would be good for us. Yeah, let's do a small pilot. And then start trying to figure out the mechanics of that and how that would work. And again, pre-COVID, they were just as flexible as they are now. So this isn't a current state issue. This isn't a COVID issue about their flexibility. They were flexible to begin with. All right, so questions when you're buying, some of the things that I want you to look at. These, again, I'm going to go through 12, but I'm going to focus in on, one that I really want you to think deeply about when you're purchasing, all right? Looking at live software, we already covered that. Talking about training, developing a good training plan, we talked about that. Making sure that that's it. The one that's highlighted, obviously, in yellowish orange, this is something that gets skipped, quite frankly. This is something that we talk to references, and references are buyers. Those are typically at the highest levels, and it's like references on a resume. These are people that are already going to say nice things about you. So vendors have a slate of those people that they'll go to the mat and say nice things about them. Those are great references. You will get very little out of talking to those people. So you know, this is actually recruiting 101. Talk to other people. Talk to people that they're not telling you about. And so one of the things I want you to do the next time you go walk down this path is not just talk to buyers, because they'll have a list of clients. You can go through LinkedIn, you can find your peers that work at those places, but also talk to users. So buyers sometimes, depending on the size of the company, buyers sometimes can buy software and not use it. Shocking, right? So let's say you're the CHRO of Walmart. I'm pretty sure that person has never logged into the performance management application that they bought. I have no idea what it is. Could be success factors, could be whatever, but I'm pretty sure they've never logged into it. I'm just going to guess. And I'm not talking badly about Walmart. I worked there for 6 years of my life, worked for Sam Walton. So I love Walmart. This isn't about them. It's just the higher you go up in an organization, the bigger the organization, the further they get away from the actual applications that people use day to day to do the job. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is in every function, by the way. We could be talking about marketing at this point, or operations, or finance, same thing. So you want to talk to buyers. That gives you some good tips on buying software from vendors, but you really want to talk to users and super users, power users of the software, and find out, okay, they're saying this, is that true? Let's just cut to the chase. I want to make sure that when we buy software for our firm, that it gets used, a la training. So I want to always make sure that we're buying great software, but we're buying software that people will use. Talk to users. Cut through all of that nonsense and get right to the user community. And those user communities typically are online. They're pretty easy to penetrate. They're pretty easy to find and then ask questions. In LinkedIn, in Facebook, like over Twitter, like it's not that difficult to find users of a particular technology. And the questions that you want to ask them, it's real simple. How do you use it? Do you like it? If you had the opportunity to buy something else, would you buy something differently? It's same questions that you would ask in the hiring situation. Would you work with this person again? did you like working there? That type of stuff. It's the exact same. We're just asking about software. What was your experience with that software? Did you like it? Would you, in your new company, if you were to, move over to IBM, would you take that technology with you? Those types of probative questions of users they cut through a lot of the noise, a lot of the marketing shtick, a lot of the sales shtick, and a lot of the noise. You just talk to the people that are doing the job, using the technology that you're thinking about buying, and you will find out the truth. And the truth could be shocking, could be exactly much better than what you're thinking. I'm not looking at just the negatives here. I'm thinking about also the positives. I don't know why that got cut off at the bottom. Ashley, let's make sure we fix that when we send out the slides. But anyhow, but when you talk to users, you're going to find out the pros, you're going to find out the cons, you're going to find out where the bodies are buried, you're going to find out all that stuff. So that's why it's important. I clicked on the slide too quick, but I switched then from external buying questions to internal buying questions. So now this is you and your team and how you collaborate with your team to then buy software. Did a bunch of research about this in October, November, and December, and found out a lot of interesting things. So this, I can go into a lot of depth in this area. So if you're really curious, like who's on the demo and who's involved in the buying process, I've got a lot of that data. So I can really go deep there. This is what is yellow, orange-ish color. We've covered the integrations part and the API strategy and the ecosystem, but now we got to go finer with the team and separate those from must-have to nice-to-have. Again, now you're looking at your entire workflow and the technologies that lay on top of your workflow, and you're saying to yourself, well, it'd be nice if we had this integration. Well, before you purchase, it has to be a must-have. This has to be connected to payroll. This has to be connected to our HRS, connected to our benefits management software. It has to be connected to onboarding. It has to be connected to performance management. Whatever those things are for you, you separate all the nice-to-haves and the must-haves, and you've got to have when you buy that. From an internal perspective, you've got to make sure that you get as many of the must-haves as humanly possible. When it comes to integrations, I tell people, generally speaking, don't be a guinea pig. So don't be anybody's first integration. So let's say you're with ADP and your payroll folks are really happy with ADP, and you fall in love with this ATS, whatever, pick one, and you really, really, really like them, but those aren't integrated. They've never worked together, and they're not integrated. They don't have any clients together. The problem with that is, how does the integration get done? It's much easier today than it was years ago, but now it's one of time and money and energy. So does ADP create the integration? Does that ATS create the integration? And do you pay for the integration? And these are questions that, again, if they're already pre-integrated, you don't have to ask. You know, you've got 100 customers that ADP is already integrated with, Lever, let's say, as an ATS, or iCIMS as an ATS. They're already integrated. Done. So you don't have to think about that. That's why it's so important. You don't want to be a guinea pig, and I'll stick to that. We're, generally speaking, horrible at negotiating. We're great at negotiating on our job. Like working with a candidate, and even working with our own jobs. Like when we get to go from job to job, we're actually pretty good at negotiating there. Like we got to get the fundamentals of like a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement and things like that. Like we understand negotiating. I'm going to start here. You're going to start here. We're going to talk about what's important to you and to me, and we're going to somehow coalesce this into something that we both could live with. Great. But we're horrible at negotiating with software vendors. And it's because we're just not good for it. We're not set up for it. And they sell software all the time. So they're selling software to tens, hundreds, thousands of clients. Turns out they're really good at it, and we're not. So we're automatically at a disadvantage. You add on top of that generally speaking, we use their contracts and their contract language. We don't use our own. We don't have a SaaS software contract laying around that we use for all of our contracts. This is an important part of when you negotiate, is get a lawyer. A lot of lawyer jokes here. I could definitely insert, but I'm not going to. This is one of those deals. You might not have one on staff, and you probably won't have one on staff. Even large firms don't have a software, a SaaS expert on staff. But in the world, these folks exist, where they can look at a contract and tell you exactly the paragraphs to strike and why. And little things like, do you own your data? Do they own your data? Do you co-own the data? Do they own the metadata? Look, like little things like you wouldn't even think to talk about or bring up in a negotiation. SaaS contract lawyers, software lawyers, they know, because they've seen thousands of these contracts, and they know the language that will get you into trouble down the road. So negotiating price isn't as difficult. I also tell folks, don't start with price. Go through all the other things that I've kind of put you through for the paces that I've actually noticed. I haven't really talked about price. You're going to get eventually to price. And that's not the hardest part. It's like getting all these other things, getting trading nailed down, getting the integrations, figuring out the ones that are the important things, making sure the contract doesn't put you into a real position of weakness where you have to buy your data at the end of the contract. Like you want to switch, you want to move from, let's say SAP to Oracle, and in the SAP contract that you signed 5 years ago, there's a clause in there that says you have to write $100,000 to get your historical data. Like, I'm not saying that exists. My point is it could exist. It could exist in contracts that you've already signed. That's why you want to use a lawyer, because you want to get that stuff out of those contracts so you're not beholden to them. Okay, why this is important is as you're auditing, as we talked about in slide 4, you're auditing, right? You're looking at things, you're auditing how your people are organized and how they collaborate. You're looking at your processes and microprocesses. You're looking at technology. One of the things that gets in the way is that we, in large companies and in small, we personalize things. Like it's Sally's onboarding process, and Doug built the, he built the sourcing strategy, and Jamie built, whatever. Pick it. And now we've got people in front of those things, and if when we go back to audit them, now it's almost like we're offending Jamie. Like, how dare you? We, spend a lot of time and energy on that onboarding, process. How dare you go back and look at my work? So depersonalize all that stuff. Like, even if Jamie did all the work on whatever process, fantastic, thanks, kudos, get your paycheck, whatever. Don't make it Jamie's process. Don't make it Jamie's technology purchase. You know what I mean? Don't make it Jamie's idea on how we're organized. Do all of those things and depersonalize everything, because it'll make revisions and auditing and editing that much better and easier, because then you're not personally attacking somebody. It's not an affront, right? You're not trying to hurt Jamie's feelings or Greg's feelings. You're just trying to get more efficient and more effective in what you do. That's it. We're not trying to hurt anybody, just trying to get better at what we do. So additional considerations. All right. So this is like, for those of you that are married, this is essentially prenup, right? The concept of a prenup. When you get into a contract, you're thinking about the exit. I know it's a little dark to think this way, but I have a lot of dark humor streak in me anyhow. However, we're talking about software and not your marriage. We're talking about software. And so what you want in your contract is a graceful exit. And you want to talk about it when you're purchasing, when you're actually talking to them about, hey, I want to sign a 10-year deal. Fantastic. The price is going down. We talked about training, integrations. We've done all the hard work. Team's ready. Implementation is going to go well. What happens when things, or if things don't go well? And you'd be amazed at how many contracts don't have anything, or our conversations have never happened. We've just never even talked about it. We've never thought about it. And what I want you to do is think about it. You're buying something, you're entering into an agreement. Okay. What does it look like if the agreement doesn't work out? And I'll move away from the marital part of that analogy quickly, because that will get me in a lot of hot water. But the point is have a pathway, have a discussion, have language in the contract, and have a clear path to a graceful exit for both firms, collaboratively. Like you're not trying to hurt the vendor. You're not trying to get hurt either. You just want something that's collaborative and graceful on both sides. So a lot of people kind of start off with the idea that switching with SaaS, software as a service, essentially software delivered over the internet. So we're all talking about the same thing. People think that switching is easy. And we even talk like it's easy, like you just change it like you change your socks. It's like, hard no, hard pass. No, you can't, because even if you're going from one sourcing technology to another, you still have to relearn. You have to train. You have to go and figure it out. People hide behind it. Well, it's intuitive software. It's just easy. It's super easy to use. Yeah. When someone says that, I deduct IQ points, because nothing's easy to use until you use it. So, even when we first used Google, you still had to use it a bunch of times before you figured it out. So, and Google is probably the most intuitive product ever made. So talk to people that have made that particular switch. And again, if it's an ATS, if it's a CRM, if it's onboarding technology, and they've made that particular switch, talk to those people, buyers, users, and just kind of get the 411 on what was the switch like. So what do you wish After you switched, is there anything that you wish you still had? How did it go? How did the data? Did you get all your historical data put into it? You know, how was the training? How was the switch? So it's easy to say switching is easy. It's much harder to do. As you think about implementations, and implementations are something I've studied for a long time, so I've got a lot of notes and a lot of ideas on implementations. Again, when you get back into this, and I've actually heard a number of people talk about how they've sped up implementations during this time, which is actually really interesting. But when you do your implementations, there's going to be things that I want you to consider. And the first thing out of these first four is the inevitable disaster. Okay, in every implementation ever, there's always a disaster. There's always the unforeseen. Something's going to happen. You're going to say your data is perfect, and they're going to find out that your data is not perfect. They're going to miss a meeting with your CEO, and you're going to be embarrassed. Okay, you know the scenarios because you've been through this hell. In fact, I could make every one of you on the phone call on this webinar cry by just saying the word implementation, because every single one of you has been through a terrible implementation. You've been through one of these inevitable disasters. The thing about the inevitable disaster is we tend to not talk about it. Well, when we're in buying, and what I would suggest is bring that forward and talk about it. It's like, hey, at one point we're going to get crisscross. Like, it's going to have it. We're going to argue. We're going to fight. We're going to have disagreements. Our teams might not even like each other. These things are going to happen. Okay, how do we fix it? What do we do? What can we preemptively do to make sure that we're set up for success with the inevitable disaster? Actually, skip this slide, and I'll go back to it. So inevitable disaster is going to happen. Talk about it in the sales process. Bring it all the way forward. Don't let it happen in implementation. Don't talk about it in implementation. Talk about it in sales, and then pull it through when you go into your implementation. Same thing is with management involvement. Successful implementations statistically come down to, is your management involved? If your management involved, typically implementations go better than if your management is not, if they're disconnected somehow from your implementation. So getting them involved, not just financially, get their sign off, budget and all that other stuff, but getting them involved. Like, hey, we're rolling out this new onboarding software. We'd like for you to onboard you. We'd like to teach you how this is going to culturally, how it's relevant, how it makes sense for the firm, etc. And so getting them involved, they get excited once they see how it aligns with the values of the firm, and it aligns with what the company is trying to achieve. Like, they get it, but you got to get them involved. And if you can't get them involved, I've actually told people to just hit pause, like, don't buy. If you can't get them involved, you run a real serious risk of not having a great implementation. You might get all the training you need, you might get all the whatever, but getting them involved always trumps, not to use that word, always makes it more successful statistically. So I can prove that if you need math, because I've done it. So let's talk about terms, user interface, user experience, and user adoption. So we think of these things, sometimes we think about these things simultaneously. They are absolutely different things. And so we need to actually recognize that these are three different and distinct different things. The user interface essentially is what you see. So your eyeballs. So when you click on the software, you log in, boom, that interface of how a human to the technology, be it on your phone, tablet, laptop, desktop, whatever, what does that interface look like? The experience is how you travail and how you proceed through the software. What is your experience? What do you click through to get to the thing you need? How do you run the reports? How do you get to the places that you need? How do you, search your ATS, etc. Adoption is consumption. It's usage, it's consumption, it's adoption, it's how long you're in the application, how often you're in the application, how you're leveraging the application. User adoption comes down to training. We know that. We've talked about that. So let's talk a little bit about user adoption, and we'll starting off, we'll kind of get into in-application user adoption. So imagine if you're in, okay, well, you're in iCIMS, great application. So you're inside iCIMS and you're doing a bit, but you can't remember this one part, this one thing, this one, assessment that you want to use. And do you want to use it with this particular job class? Do you want to use it with this job? And you can't remember how to turn it on and turn it off. You just can't remember. Well, where do you go to get that information? There's a help, there's a FAQ, there's a chat button, there's all these other different things. The in-application inside iCIMS, if you can do in-application training, like I need to know this, and it could be a bot, it can be video, it can be voice, actually. In application, how do I do this? In fact, I did a webinar 2 years ago with a guy at Remco in Singapore, and he was talking about doing voice activated. So like Siri, how do I do this? And they're inside the application, which was genius, and it makes a lot of sense. But in application, not outside. I have to go to a website, go to a place, do this thing. I got to go somewhere else. I've forgotten. I've been interrupted. Facebook's pinging me with a bunch of notifications about my wife. Blah 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 blah. In applications keeps you there, and it solves the problem inside the application. So that helps with user adoption. User adoption 3.0, if you will, because we are learning more about user adoption. I've been studying it since 2009. So we are at a different phase in user adoption. You do have more vendors that kind of openly talk about how do you adopt and how you're going to get the most out of the software, which is better than not talking about it, of course, but it all comes down to training. And again, you can almost skip everything else on this list. I don't want you to, but they're all not as important as training. If you do training right, you're going to get adoption. That you got to work at it. You got to plan for it. You got to do research around it. You got to communicate. Like there's nothing easy about training. Training professionals, learning and development professionals will tell you nothing easy about training. However, if you've made this hard push to buy this software, and you've gotten everyone bought in, you've got everyone, literally everyone in your firm is bought in. Now you got to get them trained, and that there is nothing that makes that easy. And this is for me, this is a great collaboration moment with you and the vendor that you picked. This is where you basically essentially say, okay, how do we get everyone to use and spend time and leverage the application that we've spent time and money and energy purchasing? All right, yeah. This is, again, pre-built integrations are your best friend. When you go down this path, the next time you go down this path, I want you to remember that pre-built integrations. I'm trying to burn it into your brain that you're thinking about those things. It's like, I want stuff that's already integrated. I don't care that you're thinking about integrating or you just signed a partnership with. I want it pre-built. I want to know, I want to see that it's already done. I want to talk to clients that already have the integrations. I want to know that these things are pre-built and that the people are already using these. Just a couple more slides and we'll get to Q&A. Because we talked about process for a second, and then I want to think about workflow. What I want you to think about, and this is just a simple graphic because I didn't want to kind of make this overly complicated. So again, I take talent acquisition and I go from the source, how do we find the people, all the way to onboarding. So a lot of people stop before onboarding and that becomes talent management. I don't. I go into onboarding. As a talent acquisition professional, I go all the way into, and I believe it's a part of our function. So this is a simple workflow. Sourcing then begets, you now know the people, you put them in recruitment marketing, you market to them. Okay, at one point they take an action, they fill out an application. They've given you, all their data, and they said that they're interested. They've done something, a CTA, they've called to action, they've done something that you want, and then begets all of the different layers of assessment, interviews, personality, behavioral, skills testing. Like, you can layer that a 1,000 ways. The reason I wanted to talk about this in this way, and using the little round circles, is that I want you to think about the hundreds, if not thousands, of little things that happen inside of each of these. Okay, these are just 5 bubbles, right? Because if I put all the thousands of things on here, you'd be overwhelmed because it would look like a star system. But in every single one of these, for the smallest of companies and the biggest of companies, there are all of these little steps, all of these other processes that we have to think about. And now's a great time to think about them, quite frankly. Now is actually a wonderful time to think about all of those different processes and what could we be doing to make ourselves better and faster. In December, if you go back to then, we weren't as fast as our candidates. Candidates were faster than we were. We'd fall in love with, Jane, think she's, just perfect candidate. And 2 weeks later, we'd get back to her and she's already got a job offer for somebody else. Actually, she's already started a job somewhere else. And again, I'm not picking on any company in particular. It's just as a discipline, we were slower than the candidates. We can't be as slow as the candidates, in our future state. So we've got to figure out how to get faster. And if you want to do the price, quality, and speed thing, you've got to figure out all 3 of those simultaneously. You've got to also figure out how do you get the highest quality, fastest at the lowest cost. So turns out it's not as easy as just fixing speed, but let's fix one thing first: get faster. Wanted to make sure that we talked about the metrics. I get asked this question a million times a day, and I always come back to regrettable turnover. Turnover in and of itself is not a bad thing or a bad word or a 4-letter word. It's actually a good word. You should have turnover. You don't want some people to stay, turns out. Okay, it's the regrettable turnover. And right now what we're seeing, in the market is there's a bunch of regrettable turnover, people that they didn't want to let go or furlough or release, they had to, or they felt like they had to. That's going to come back to bite them, and they know it, and we all know it. So that's the thing that you want to look at as a talent acquisition professional, is you want to look at the value chain of bringing those people in, them adding value, and the organization and your hand in it, the ability to keep those folks. That's what regrettable turnover is. You didn't want to lose them, and you lost them. So of course I've made all this sound really easy because that's what I do. This is the actual definition of easy peasy lemon squeezy, the Urban Dictionary version. And so none of this is easy. There isn't a slide or a statement that I've made that's easy. So I know that, and I get that. And so I'm a resource for you, both during this webinar, but also after this webinar, most importantly after this webinar, because you're going to have questions. Maybe not today, but 3 months down the road, you're going to say, what are you pre-built integrations? I know William said something about it. Shit, I can't remember. We've slept since then. Reach out to me. And again, pretty easy to find on the internet. And you'll have many different ways. You can text me. I don't care. I look at all those mediums as the same. It doesn't matter. You want to send me a DM over Instagram, it's the same to me. So I'm a resource for you. That's my job, is not only just to be helpful and trying to give you advice, but also kind of steer you in the right direction. Ashley, I think we're close to time. Do we have any time for questions?
Well, we have 1 minute. So if anyone has any additional questions, we do have one question just asking for your thoughts on specific tools, especially around training. Do you have any recommendations or any experience that you'd like to share with onboarding teams and the training aspect?
That's a fantastic question. Obviously, with what we've learned from work from home, is you want training to be video based to start with. You want a video like what people think of as mobile, and the importance of something being mobile first. We want training to always now. What we've learned, we want training to be video first. And so, can I see a video on that? Then depending on the content, then can I do something else? One of the things that you want to do with onboarding is push as much of the stuff, the compliance stuff, policies, all of that, as much as that you can push after they've signed the offer letter, as much of that as you can push into before they start, the better. So that they can actually start the job and not have all that, stuff to deal with. Push it forward. But one of the things, you asked a specific question about, training, and especially on the onboarding side, is you want to make sure that it's a modern system that supports video, but also supports learning styles and learning differences, because we don't all learn the same, and we all have differences in how we like to learn. And so you just want to make sure that the onboarding software has already thought those thoughts, and they've already prepared for that. Like if you have an employee that has dyslexia, that you're not putting a bunch of written content in front of them. Or if you do, you've got it subtitled. You like that's simple stuff, but it's not simple, because we're not thinking about it. But great question, wonderful question. I could go on for hours just about that.
We have one
Before.
more. Would you like it?
Okay. Yeah, I would.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, Rodrigo asks, hi, how do you think layoffs will affect roadmaps from vendors that are under stress?
Great question, Rodrigo. Their job right now is A, survival, B, to not change anything. So what you will see out of the vendor community is behind the scenes, they're going to focus on innovation. Behind the scenes, they're going to throw up a bunch of their time, money, and resources into innovating, rebuilding the product, doing a bunch of pre-built integrations, doing a bunch of AI machine learning work, getting your analytics package right. But what they're not going to do is go and sell a bunch of new features. So what you won't see a bunch of press releases about new stuff, because new is the antithesis right now. New is your enemy. As a software firm, you can do it, you can build it, just don't show it, don't sell it. And once things start to come back, then start showing people what you've been building secretly and quietly. But the roadmaps have all been shuffled. And so, Rodrigo, one of the things I'd tell you is every single vendor I've talked about has told me I've reprioritized the roadmap. Now, what we've learned with not only the recession, but COVID, et cetera, is how the product needs to change to adapt to some of the new realities. So the roadmaps, all of them have been affected, absolutely, but they need to be stable right now. Their job for the industry and for their customers is just to be the same, be steady Eddie. And behind the scenes, they're doing all kinds of cool stuff that they're just not going to talk about because they don't want to freak out their customers with a bunch of new stuff. But it's a great question.
Thank you so much. I think that's it for questions today.
Awesome.
You were very thorough.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about
Yeah,
that. But
no, that tends to happen.
let's make sure we
He
thank
says,
iCIMS for them
oh, yes.
sponsoring this, because without them sponsoring this, we wouldn't be able to do it clearly.
Nope.
So let's thank them. And then what happens next, Ashley?
Well, what happens next is you will receive an email from GoToWebinar that thanks you for being here. And then in about 3 hours, you'll receive an email from Ryan at RecruitingDaily.com with a link to your slide deck and video. If you by chance don't receive that email and you need that information right away, you can simply visit the landing page that you originally signed up on. It's there. We update it. But please keep an eye out on that for that email, because there's a special educational download inside. How do I word that
That's
right, William?
that's
Was
nice.
I
That's
excited
nice.
enough about it?
It's like crackle. It's like Cracker Jacks. There's a surprise in the box. Now the surprise could be something
There is.
nice or not, but there's a surprise in the box.
It could be a fake ID, you know?
Tattoo of a unicorn, whatever.
Yep. You just never know.
You
You
just
never
never
know.
know. All right.
Well, thank you all for being here with us today. This is a rough time. I mean, I don't even know the words to use, but we really do appreciate you logging in with us and hanging in. We're going to keep doing these webinars. So check in with us. We're just going to keep trucking. And next week on the 28th, we have our HRTX virtual event, which is kind of like going through the roof right now, isn't it, William? So, yeah, check that out. It's going to be fantastic. We have 7 speakers on, educators. It's going to be fun.
Alrighty. Thank you,
I
everyone.
think we lost there. Thanks, y'all. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, William. Thank you.
All right. See you.
See you soon.
Blah, 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 blah.